Boom. What's up, my friend? How are you?
Doing well, brother. How about you?
I'm doing great. Can you hear me well? I've got a new microphone.
You sound great.
Perfect. Yeah, that way, because the little headset that I had, it was old, and then every time I would like blow out of my nose, and so yeah. So yeah, man, I wanted to talk this week about awake but not woke. And I know that woke is really thrown around a lot. But I figured that you and we could have fun with it while also going pretty deep. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
You have to have a little bit of levity when you talk about these things, or else, well,
Life in general, man. You can't take life too seriously.
that's true. That's one thing I love about, some of these great, you know, um, spiritual leaders like Sadhguru, for example, is he's got an amazing sense of humor. Or even Osho, for that example, another one I love too. He had an impeccable sense of humor and comedic timing and all of that. So I think really comedy really is a gift. And, it's like the adage says, if I don't laugh, I weep, I cry. So I
Yeah.
think it's a lot healthier way to.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense because Nietzsche wrote about how the psychological Superman is somebody who's as a child, basically somebody who doesn't take themselves too seriously and laughs at their own jokes. And that's kind of the point. And as I mentioned in the Tao Te Ching, last time, as we're born, we're soft and supple, but as we die, we're rigid and brittle. And that's really what happens when you take yourself too seriously. Right? Any wrong word, any slight, you become so brittle that you just get so angry and project all that anger onto somebody else,
And
even
it's
though
just
it's
words.
your own issue. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just words. It's just there's so much, and really it's a sign of first world, you know, luxuries, right?
Is it though?
Words
Is it
are the
really
most.
though? Dude, there's so many people who live in third world squalor here in America.
Well, I think that itself, that construct itself is, but playing devil's advocate here for a moment.
Fair enough.
If these sometimes most of these, let's just say lesser developed countries, um, if here in America where people are, over largely they're living a life of luxury, even if they are hurting
Yeah.
compared to other places in the world. And if it's just to the point now where words really do that much damage to you, well, try going and worrying about your next meal or where you're going to sleep at night.
Where Maslow's first level isn't taken care of. Yeah.
Exactly. Those are definitely those hierarchy of needs. And, it's about having some sense of perspective. I was, I'm not going to mention names here, but I was looking over Facebook a little while ago, and a good friend of mine is traveling around the world, and she's right now in Korea and is throwing a hissy fit. I hate to use the word Karen, but she's acting like a proverbial Karen, at least on Facebook, because she can't stand the fact that because she's celiac, that South Korea doesn't accommodate gluten-free at any of their restaurants and stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like,
yeah.
if
As
that
you travel to somebody else's home and they can't accommodate you well enough. Like
it's just like how dare they? They don't change their customs, they don't change their laws and everything to just accommodate you. And it's like, well, it's part of what you get when you go into, a foreign country and stuff like that, is you're expecting everything to be like it is here. That's just, I don't want to say first world or use that term or terminology, but that just shows you what kind of a small perspective your world is.
Well, I mean, the thing is, this first world may be exactly right. I mean, typically a first world means that Maslow's, first three level, well, at least first two levels are secure. Granted, unemployment will kind of throw that out of whack. The second level, at least, the stock market crash might upset that second level. Right now, politics is really upsetting that third, which is community, right?
Mhm.
And that sense of community. And I don't think anyone really even knows what words mean anymore. And people who call themselves patriots will be the first to scream at you to leave if you disagree with them. But if you're a patriot, wouldn't you stand for the First Amendment? I mean, isn't it the First Amendment for a reason?
Well,
It's
yeah, I
first.
mean, if we're going to talk about the importance of like the First and the Second Amendment, well, the First Amendment's also pretty important as well, too. It's arguably even more important. You have to have
Well,
it.
you could say that their intent was that you protect the First Amendment with the Second Amendment. I mean, it
Right.
doesn't mean that you shoot somebody that you disagree with. It means that there may come a time where if you did need to defend constitutional rights from a tyrannical government that's overreaching, and one where I'm not necessarily advocating for this, but I'm curious where this goes with Biden right now is trying to justify another vaccine jab, but there's no scientific evidence to support it. The
Not only
vaccine
that,
is
but isn't it,
specifically,
didn't Biden
or sorry,
himself
sorry.
just say a few weeks ago that the pandemic is over?
Yeah, of course he did. But didn't you see that Pfizer actually upped the price of their vaccine times four? So who do you think really runs the government? Moneyed interests. Why do we feel that quarterly profits are what's most important? Moneyed interests. And I saw you comment on like a Kanye thing, about like Kanye losing his money, if I recall correctly. But ultimately, I noticed that a lot of people having that conversation are like, "Hey, look at Kanye's no longer a billionaire. Let's celebrate Taylor Swift, who is like." What if we celebrated families that actually like, hey, let's take care of the working class folk? Like, who gives a shit about Kanye or Taylor Swift? They,
That's
they
what
got
I'm
to take it.
saying.
Yeah,
It's like, and why are we focused on what Kanye's? I mean, I'm not excusing what he said or anything like that, but in the world of everything that's going on right now, I mean, we're on the brink right now of World War III, a nuclear fallout, and you take a look at the headlines and stuff, and it's like not that I'm excusing anything that Kanye said or anything like that, but in the scope of it, why is that leading to headlines when there's so many other things that are actually a lot more pertinent to everyone's lives right now than some ramblings of some mentally disturbed individual?
well, I think Plato answered that. And he said one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is being ruled by your inferiors. And here we
Yeah.
are. And so this is where like anarchy kind of concerns me, because I'm pretty well aware that Plato is much smarter than I am. I may have a deeper context and understanding the context of like here and now. But and I'm not saying that voting is necessarily the best way to interact in politics, but there's definitely got to be something than what we have now. People just throwing up their hands in nihilism and despair and allowing the crooks just to go in and fleece the nation. That just
Well,
is
let's kind of I'm glad you brought that up. Let's kind of like dissect that all, a little bit and kind of explore that if that's okay.
sure.
Um, with respect to voting and all of that, I actually voted yesterday. My
Nice.
first time living in Texas, and yeah, I was really even debating about even showing up to vote
The
because
anarchist voted. I love it.
yeah, well, I did, and the thing is in Texas, the only real optimal third party choice that you have is the Libertarian Party. So I
Mhm.
voted Libertarian, straight ticket. First time I've ever done that ever, and you know, um, turnout. I think Democrats are going to be really humbled this next election cycle because everybody's still, I mean, COVID, the whole COVID regime is still very fresh on everyone's minds. The fact that they came in and provided no relief whatsoever, and then all the hypocrisy that surrounded it. I mean, right now, I think that I'm of the opinion, and this could, I could be completely wrong about this, but my intuition is telling me that Joe Biden will not seek reelection.
I don't know, man. Like I get that the guy's eating crayons. I get that he's shitting his pants and he's lost his mind. But the thing is if you're gonna run for president once, you're gonna run for president again, unless there's something that bars you from because there's so many people around him that don't allow him to just see what's going on and see how much of a stooge that he is just flailing on the national stage. That I just can't imagine that they even allow that kind of rational thought of like, you know what, Mr. President, maybe sit it out. I just assume that he's surrounded by fluffers that just fluff him all day, and in a double entendre way, right? Exactly how it sounds, like a fluffer girl. But yeah, man, I mean, I don't see Democrats and Republicans on a national stage speaking the same language that like a local municipality speaks. I
Well,
don't see.
that's why I embrace anarchism. Is just I think that the power should go back to those local municipalities and all of that stuff versus having delegating that all out to really institutions that really have failed and repeatedly have failed the American people over and over again.
Well, I mean, it would be nice to have a national political body that actually did things that helped us, like the space race, man. Believe whether we loved it or hate it, because Russia again was a boogeyman, which was what allowed us to get to the moon in the first place. But everything that we created, that NASA created, because they're a public entity, well, then it just all that technology flowed down to the economy, and I want to say it was something on the order of like nearly $100 to one spent on NASA is what was earned on the economy, just because of the innovation and what allowed for savvy entrepreneurs. And right now we're just tying up our money on basically endless wars, right? The people who are upset that we got out of Afghanistan are now all have a Ukraine flag on their Twitter bio. I wonder why. That's so strange.
Well, I just didn't you post a quote the other day by Mark Twain or something? He said, if you ever find yourself agreeing with the majority, then you really need to reevaluate your
Yeah,
position.
it's time to regroup or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that really rings true. Kind of go back to the whole, like the whole NASA thing there and the whole Joe Biden thing. Yeah, you're very well maybe right. He very well might seek re-election. I've heard rumblings even from the shitlit media where some of these most prominent people have said that either he isn't running or that they've heard that he isn't running. But also, if you really listen, also they're really, because they know they're dead in the water with Kamala. Is Joe I think Joe could have basically a complete vegetable and barely have a heartbeat, and they still would take their chances with him versus Kamala Harris because they just know that that's just a disaster waiting. So if you listen to them, the moneyed interests in the Democratic Party, they're really trying to ratchet up right now Gavin Newsom.
Oh yeah, well of course, dude. And you know who he is, yeah?
The governor of California. Well,
yeah, dude, that's Nancy Pelosi's nephew, bro. He's not just the governor, he's Nancy Pelosi's nephew.
They never talk about that, do they?
Of course they don't.
Talk about this dynasty and stuff like that. And why? Why do they overlook that?
Well, it's purposeful, man. Why don't we see Ghislaine Maxwell's client list? Why don't we see what actually happened to Jeffrey Epstein? Because it might actually allow people to understand what happens behind the scenes and maybe affect some level of change. Because in a sense, knowledge is power there, because you're just shining a light on the darkness, and then the darkness recedes. And then we see, oh, okay, well, that's what happened. And that's why we're not allowed to. Because you're supposed to just look at Gavin Newsom and be like, oh, wow, he's pretty. Look how pretty he is. Even as a guy, my knees go weak, right? And
with the whole respect to NASA and all of that, yeah, I absolutely agree. How that all filtered back into the economy. We had a different paradigm back in those days, up until really the Reagan administration and Thatcher government in the UK in the late 70s, early 80s. That's when the rise of neoliberalism really took hold of the Western world, Western Europe and the US. And the end of the New Deal era came to an official end. This is at least what Chomsky has kind of delineated it as. And when we're seeing the rise of corporatism and all of its manifestations take over every form of government and everything.
Well, but look at the baby boomers that allowed everything that they had slip through their fingers, while then admonishing all the following generations as if it was their fault.
that is an interesting generation. Interesting that you brought up the baby boomers, because they're the only generation that I think I can name off the top of my head that had it better than both their parents
Mm-hmm.
and their children.
Yeah.
Because their children, what kind of a future are they looking at? You'll own nothing and you will be happy. Isn't that the mantra coming out of Klaus Schwab and
Yeah.
economic order and all of that.
So I think where the baby boomers went wrong is that they saw the map as the territory, which is why they say back in my day, well, I have a map right here. Back in my day, it was fine. So why can't you do it? And so they mistake the map for the territory. And I think that's ultimately where they go wrong.
Baby boomers were the generation that really kind of sold out and shifted the paradigm over to corporate. I mean, that extended not only from Reagan, but clear through Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton put it on steroids. And really where the complete destruction of the Democratic Party, or at least from being the working man's party, really happened is under the Bill Clinton administration. That's basically when the Democratic Party became another extension of Wall Street.
Yeah.
And so to say that, my point is that in order to bring about like a really good space race and all of that, we really need to have a new paradigm.
Well, and
have another paradigm shift.
With what you talked about, how, you know, the Democrats evolved into the party of Wall Street. Well, now we see why people are so focused on wokeism, not because it's a natural organic thing.
A weapon of mass distraction.
Exactly. It's a weaponized distraction in order to create a psyop on people that are so scared and abused that they can barely think straight. And since they're in that state, they're very easy to control. And if you're easily controlled, then you can give the appearance of free and fair elections, even though it's on its face nearly laughable. But I think that's ultimately why. And you know, ideas are so powerful, and I want to see more. I would love to see more people find effective ways to get ideas into the ecosphere instead of just or the ecosphere instead of just Twitter.
Well,
now that Elon's gone, I'm curious to see where that goes.
It's sad because, you know, I was one of those that spent a long time in college, and I went part-time for many, many years. And I remember early on when university was truly, we had what back in those days, free speech zones, where now they kind of replace that with, you know, safety corners and stuff like that, or safety zones and stuff where you can't offend. But the whole the process of university is going in and expressing thoughts and ideas. How can thoughts and ideas be that destructive to you? What does that say about your character? Is if you feel so threatened by words and ideas, if there's bad thoughts and bad ideas out there, I'm not saying that there aren't, but confront that with more free speech. You know, you don't just go ahead and try to prevent other people's way of expressing those. If you disagree with it, if you passionately disagree with it, do so, but challenge them in a way that doesn't take anybody else's rights of expression away from them.
So I really like that in theory. The problem that I see that we run into is that, you know, how does a fish know that it lives in a fishbowl? And we're programmable by design. Our cells actually, you know, the membranes around the cells will actually inform it of the environment that it's in, of the different hormones, you know, flushing through the system, so it knows how to operate and execute the next level. So we're programmable by design. And the only thing that we get to choose is the environment in which we're programmed. And so what does the ecosphere say? We'll go to college. Why? Because it's been so perverted now that then you can have your mind get full of worms and you can get brainwashed. And so if you're in a bowl, how do you know that if you're a fish in a bowl, how do you know that you're there?
Yeah. Well, they used to teach critical thought, you know, and back in the day, liberals were the ones, I remember 20 years ago, where critical thinking was like considered a liberal issue. And it was the conservatives that all thought in a hive mentality. They were the ones that always, let's back in the 90s, I think, that walked around with the proverbial stick up their ass, that always were offended by, oh, we don't associate with those kinds of people and stuff. And now if you look at it, it's completely shifted.
Yep.
Where it's the liberals that are always like, oh, we don't associate with people that don't adhere to this, and this, and put pronouns in their bios, and that are simply looking to cancel anybody. It's just a weird dynamic that I've seen completely shift.
Well, yeah, sorry, finish your thought.
Is that back, like, at least in the 90s and all of that, it seemed like it was Republicans who are the ones that you wouldn't want to invite to a party. And now it's the other way, right?
Well, so here's the thing that I see is that you've got the people who own the country, right? That George Carlin talked about. And then you've got the Republicans and you've got the Democrats. Well, 10 years ago, 2012, I know it was a long time ago and people forget that. But we had the Tea Party, which was the tail that wagged the dog. Well, now we have the progressive wing, which is the tail that wags the dog, because that failed. And the owners of the country don't give a shit if it's red or blue. They don't give a shit. They have no national allegiance. And so, well, they know that they can generate the tail that wags the dog. So then when they get somebody in, like, AOC, they'd be like, hey, let me show you how naive and stupid you are. And the second that they're shown a little bit of reality, and I get that she, really pounded the pavement and she wore holes through her shoes. She worked hard as hell to get there.
She earned that. I mean,
she earned that. But what's crazy is that the most progressive thing that she ever did was before she was in office. She was in Nancy Pelosi's office, and I get that protesters are fucking annoying. I get it. I've been a protester. I know I was very fucking annoying. But it's still,
but you earned your right to protest.
Yeah, it is your right. Yeah.
And all of that.
And now, right. And so you have, and yeah, you don't have the right not to be annoyed. That's the simple amount of right that we have. But then once she got in, she got perverted by moneyed interest because she was very naive. She was around a bunch of people who only thought that they knew. They've never actually held power. They've never actually been in office, but they sat around sniffing their own farts, thinking that they were the most brilliant people. And once they got in there and popped her bubble, well, this is how the sausage is really made. And then she goes from tax the rich to wearing a dress at a huge gala saying tax the rich. And I don't believe that taxation is where we win. I think it can help. It can help with like national highways and stuff. But I think entrepreneurship and getting people to actually generate businesses and generate income, generate wealth. I think that's a wonderful way as a great vehicle for us to actually move into the future. But government subsidies, the way that they're created now, really keep like a hand on somebody's head as they're trying to tread water. And part of that's just because of the immediate cutoff, like say food stamps. If you make a few dollars over, well, you're cut off. And so there's not really a lot of welfare incentive to actually better your situation. But then the more you're on welfare, you don't even want to better your situation. So it's a really a big catch-22. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree with you. It's because you have this elites, the oligarchy, the elites, whatever word you want to ascribe to them as, that basically are the puppet masters. And they, I think I don't want to speak on the intentions on anybody or getting anybody's head, but AOC, whatever her intentions were originally, she was easily co-opted, and that's been manifested. Whether it was other psyops, but she's been completely co-opted. And the only thing is that where she's been able to produce in her entire congressional career is that she went to an elitist gala wearing a tax the rich gown. I'm sorry, that takes no guts whatsoever, regardless of whatever your views on the policies are and stuff like that. That takes no guts whatsoever.
Dude, she drank red wine in a white dress. You're telling me she has no guts? Come on.
And I guess even bringing that up now, that's considered an attack on her.
I know, you misogynist piece of shit. How dare you?
Exactly.
How dare you? Don't you know what it is? Yeah, to be a woman.
And she's the first one to call Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear. And where was she? Where was she for any of these other progressive causes? Where was she for the Medicare for All march? She never. Where was Bernie? Where was anybody from the squad? They completely, what they do is and this is my frustration is that there is no left in American politics. That's why I have a hard time even ascribing to something that doesn't even really, in theory, exist.
Mm,
Because if you were to ask Karl Marx, for example, about identity, he never once even talked about identity. But if he did, he would have said that identity is just another tool in the ideological superstructure to keep the ruling class in power.
I
Because
I think there's a lot of wisdom in Marx. I think he's useful to be an antagonistic tool against the corporatism of today. However, I think that just like any philosophy, there can be too much of a good thing. Russia's been a very poor country for a long time, and they've also hated capitalism. And so,
yeah,
if you hate rich people, you're dooming yourself to be poor. And
my
that's
reason my reason for bringing that up is that even Karl Marx himself would be against this whole identity. And I
oh,
don't
I see what
ascribe
you're
to
saying.
Marx myself anymore.
Right.
I'm more of an anarchist camp. I'm for getting the stateism out of
So,
every.
so even if Marx had the economic end result maybe a little skewed, you're saying that if there was a real left, they would even see that even Marx is against the identitarianism.
Exactly. Well, another thing is Marx was also very pro-gun and having an armed citizenry. Most people don't know that, but yeah, he advocated for it.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, and again, I ascribe to more of kind of like the Buchanan school of thought, where it's like Vladimir Buchanan was a contemporary of Marx, and at the time, he is considered now the father of um, communitarian anarchy, and he was considered a socialist originally because he shared all of the same critiques of capitalism stuff that Marx had. What happened was is that the disagreement came, and it became a very public disagreement. Is that Marx believed in a role for the state to bring about communism eventually.
Yeah.
And whereas Bakunin's critique was, well, if you replace it with like a red, if you replace the czar with like a red czar, you're going to end up with something worse
Mm.
than the czar's dictatorship. Well, history kind of proved him right. And his whole thing was returning power back to local communities, principalities, and letting people govern for themselves. So in theories, if you have a decentralized everything, you can have a complete Marxist community. I mean, you could have that completely within an anarchist framework. It just wouldn't be mandated by the state. It would be kind of like a larger commune or something like that, where people could pool their resources in together if they chose to.
Right.
In theory, my thing is to allow people to choose what society they would like to move in and give them the right ability to move out of it or whatever if they wanted to. And I think the founders originally, that's what originally they wanted the Constitution to be. It's changed over the years.
Yeah.
But I think in theory, the states are the great manufacturers of democracy. And so if, like,
Mm.
say if you wanted to belong to like live in, I'm just throwing this one out there, Vermont, for example, and have like a completely socialistic government, well, you should be able to have that freedom. Or if you wanted to go completely in the another direction, like say Texas or something, and just have a complete libertarian way of living, then you should be able to do that too.
Hmm. So the problem with complex systems is that rules can start to break down very easily. That's entropy, right? That's just simply physics.
Mm.
Um, and so in theory, I like what you're saying. I just don't know exactly how we'd make that work in a libertarian system where it's 100% taxation is theft. Because there's got to be something that we do in order to help with the roads, right? If nothing else, the highway system was magnificent. Eisenhower was able to get it passed because he said it was a matter of national security, and that was the only reason why it passed.
Mhm.
But having
Honestly, probably, but I think my thing is like we're going back to an era when we had a different sense of federalism than we do now. I think that the paradigm has shifted, and so we need a new paradigm.
I think that's fair. The
And
only way that we're going to get a healthy paradigm is actually having participation, though.
That's a fair point. And the thing is what do we do to get us to that point? Because I don't think just any of our solutions are going to be voted in.
Well, what you do is you fix yourself.
Exactly. Well, that's it. But I'm talking about like at large and stuff like that. By voting
Well,
and stuff like that, I don't
so
think
am
that
I.
do that.
Because when all deep wisdom, whether it be from Jesus, Shiva, Lao Tzu, right? I mean, Lao Tzu said, to the still mind, the universe surrenders itself. That sounds like a pretty big overarching theme, huh? Overarching way to actually help. And so I think when we find our ability to change ourselves, well, you realize then that reality is a mask, and it is, and how virtual reality, how we really are in a virtual reality system, and when that happens, you'll find that life can't help but challenge you based upon the beliefs that you have when you feel that you're ready. Hey, I feel I'm ready for forgiveness. Well, life is going to shove a big pie in your face to see how well you really have learned that lesson. And when you graduate, you'll find that you'll graduate into higher levels. But that also means that those lessons are going to be harder. But as you fix yourself, you become logarithmically more powerful. This is how Gandhi got, stopped effectively. And this is, I get a bit simple, but stopped 1 million, British soldiers, one dude in a loincloth. Nelson Mandela, millions and millions of South Africans like, hell yeah, now it's our turn, motherfuckers. And he spent, I don't know, like 27 years in prison or something. And he said, well, look, if I can forgive, then why can't you? And he stole their reason, because he was logarithmically more powerful. And so that's how. And so the more that we presume that we know what's going to work for other people, the more diseased we become. But the more that we learn how to figure out what works for us, and the more we accept ourselves, well, the world will accept us too. Because we realize what works for us, we're just living our truth. And other people say, holy shit, look at Nate. Nate isn't saying, hey, you should do what I do. They say, hey, I want to do what Nate does, because they just see you living your truth. And that's what I mean by that.
So let your light so shine in a nutshell.
Exactly.
All right. No quarrel there. I agree. What to do with the issue, as I was thinking about, going through the matrix and stuff, there's the other issue where you do have people that are happy prisoners. Have you heard of that term?
Yeah. So like the Stockholm syndrome, stuff like that.
Yeah, maybe I'm overgeneralizing here, but I think they're kind of like your true blue, or the true believing partisan people out there, whether they be Democrats and all of that kind of stuff. They, whatever reason, their side is always right and the other side is always wrong.
So what is the I'm going to misquote it. The Tao said that if you give evil nothing to oppose, it'll effectively go away on its own. And my mentor, Peter Sage, says that which you resist persists. Right? Don't think of a monkey as you take your medicine. Okay, thanks. Right? Because it won't work. Right? I was listening to Alan Watts talk about that earlier. That people in India, when he was over there, were yeah. And so don't think of a monkey as you take your medicine, or else it won't work. Well, okay, asshole. Thanks, man. Because now obviously I'm going to think of a monkey. And I can't remember where I was going with that. Well, you made a really solid point that I was trying to answer, and then I fell backwards and I had to fix my chair and kind of forgot what I was going to say.
No, you're fine. What was the
point? True blue. That's right. So people who truly believe the hype that their team is right, well, why not show them how their team can be better? Let them be right, and just show them a better way of how they can be right, rather than, what does a protester say? They yell in your face. They're as inconsolable as possible. You cannot console them. You cannot console a protester. If you try to, they're just determined that they know what the right answer is. And if you come to somebody that way, again, you're coming all diseased. And what do people? What do we do with diseased people? Well, we shove them in a corner and put them on leper island. And
Yeah.
so that's what is that. Let them be right and show their team how they can play better.
How do we show them?
Okay, well,
Give an
first by
example.
asking questions, right? Questions are the steering wheel of the mind.
Mhm.
So, what does it mean to be a patriot? And just start writing it down. Let them see their own words. Let them see the power of it. Taking American, made in the USA. Okay, awesome.
Patriot, that one sounds like something you would say to somebody that's on the right wing, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah, absolutely. But
yeah.
let's, even somebody who's a protester, do the same thing, the exact same words. Somebody who's authoritarian. Okay, well, what does it mean to be authoritarian? Like you shout people down,
That's
you demand that you're constantly right. Doesn't it kind of sound like you're operating under that, even though you're a lefty? Well,
it
there we
very
go.
much. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
they
this is why you write down what they say, and you get people to see, because we're not allowed to see what we actually think.
yeah, that's true. That's true. And then I'm kind of going back into what you Carl Jung, when you're saying it, about the lefty and stuff like that. What they're Jung is saying is that they're projecting.
100%.
Projecting things that they see in other people or qualities that they see in themselves that they hate onto other people. We see that a lot with the so-called Trump derangement
Oh,
syndrome.
yeah.
People start exhibiting their words, like all of a sudden they say he's some authoritarian, he's some Hitler, he's some whatever, fill in the blank. And then they're the ones out there calling for people to be censored, certain books and stuff like that to be taken off and stuff like that because it doesn't fit the gender definitions or something that they want to do. And they start exhibiting behaviors that are very, very.
Dude, even more simple example. Even more simple example. As soon as Trump became president, you started seeing all Democratic operatives just posting on Twitter, I got in a cab. There's a Russian. I hope I survive. Are you fucking kidding me? Can you imagine if they said, I got in a cab and there's a Jew driver? I hope I live.
Yeah, I don't understand why Russophobia now is such a, maybe it's because Russians are predominantly white, they can get away with that. But if you replace, like you said, you replace that with any minority group, Russians, and you're sounding very, very bigoted.
Well, because you are.
Yeah.
Right? That's why
And
you
these
say
are coming from so-called woke crowds, right?
right. Well, because the thing is that the problem with wokeism is, again, it's all a presumption that they know. And that's just a diseased mind. That's it. And so they're walking around with diseased minds trying to say that they have the cure.
And we have institutions all around that all they do is enable that. So yeah, I agree. Look inward. That's the real direction, is improve yourself. The world out there may be completely going to hell in a handbasket, and it looks like it is day by day. But well, I think the thing is to kind of look inward and find your own senses zen and peace about it.
Speaking of looking inward, aren't you going to Tennessee next month
I am actually on the 17th.
to go see Sad Guru, the man himself, huh?
Well, I don't know if Saguru will be there personally himself. I think he might be because I know that they're doing the Shambhavi Mahamudra, and I think that has to be transmitted from teachers. So I don't know how they go about that, but yeah. So I'm
I
really
bet you're
looking forward
excited.
to it. Yeah. Whether it's through a screen or something that I see him or something like that, or if it's live in person, I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, and then energy doesn't need proximity. I mean, that having him there would certainly, there's something about feeling, right? Since even though this is all an illusion,
Yeah.
I still operate in a certain rule set that where my brain still processes that illusion. And so being able to hold his hand or just hug the man or just look into his eyes, right? I'm sure he doesn't allow anyone to, I don't know. I don't know if he allows people to hug him, but like if just thinking about that, man, it's just there's something so sincere and intimate.
Yeah.
But if you open your heart to him, man, when you're there, I bet it's going to feel very, very powerful, very, very powerful.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great experience, and yeah, I think this will be a lot of fun. And
How long is it?
it's about 4 days. So it's like from Thursday the 17th till Sunday the 21st, or Monday the 21st is when my flight comes back. So
Okay.
I'll
So
have a little bit of
November
time
might
to
be a little,
go.
yeah, November might be a little up in the air as far as podcasting too. I've got a 4-day retreat from the 10th through the 13th for Peter Sage. Um,
Oh, nice.
yeah, but I'm not leaving. It's a retreat in that like it's happening in Cyprus. So like I have to wake up, I don't know, like 1 in the morning. And it's like 13 hours each day. Like it's
Mhm.
a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. So I'm probably not going to be fit to do a whole lot of podcasting those 4 days. You're going to be out doing your thing. So we might just have to kind of wing it,
Sure.
during that mid-November.
Yeah, I mean, it is the holiday season too. So yeah,
You know.
that sounds great. And oh, by the way, I just got that copy of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. That is pure gold.
So how much have you read of it?
I've read a couple chapters. I've been also reading some Game of Thrones too, because I've been reading a lot of nonfiction, so I needed to kind of like take a little break. So picking up a little Game of Thrones there and there because I just finished the House of the Dragon first season.
Have
So,
you so you've never read Game of Thrones before?
I still haven't read Game of Thrones, the book. I'm reading the House of the Dragon, Fire and Blood, or things, whatever the new series is based on. And then I'm going to go back to Game of Thrones and read that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see. So you're reading like the Targaryen line, is that what it is? Okay, so I've read all the books that have come up till now, but only of the original. Um I was fascinated by the TV show when it came out. I don't binge watch TV the way that I used to. And But when Game of Thrones first came out, the first 2 seasons, I mean, immaculately follow the books. The third season, if I recall, easily 80% plus. Fourth season is really when they started taking a lot more liberties. Fifth season, it was just like, okay, they've completely divorced. And it's like we've got the same people. They're generally doing the same things, but there's not really a lot of things coinciding. Fifth was just complete liberties. And sixth was just like they're doing their and like it's a new medium and they should be allowed to do their own things, but it certainly made it worse, I think.
Well, I think that also George R. R. Martin has also spoken out about that too. It's like, well, you're kind of deviating from my outline and stuff. And obviously he hadn't finished the books later, but I think he provided them with a very good outline. And I think he was intending on it going for an extra 2 or 3
Yeah.
seasons.
Yeah. Well,
And
but if you get a bunch, this is again, you get a bunch of people who sit around and sniff their own farts, and they're going to assume that they know more than Plato. They're going to assume that they know more than the person who wrote this whole damn story.
that's why I have big problems with people just like the new one with Token, for example. I haven't even bothered to take a look at it because I've heard that they've taken grand strides and grand liberties, probably because they couldn't secure the rights or something like that from the
I've
family.
I've
So
tried 3 times now to finish the first episode and not even restarting. It's just so boring, man.
yeah.
And maybe it's because I'm likely going into it with my own prejudices, but everything is just like, here's somebody taking off a shirt in a very dramatic way, and we should care because they're elves. It's just like, what, man? Like, I just don't really find it interesting. It's
Yeah.
like somebody like they really allowed their costume designer to be like, hey, this is your your season, right? This is your show. And it was like, well, I don't really know how to write a script. Well, who cares? Just create all the costumes and then it'll be fine. And it's just like showing costumes and like yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm likely prematurely judging it, but I haven't seen much to impress me yet.
I feel really sad because this year, like the Obi-Wan, I'm a huge, huge Star Wars nerd, huge. And Obi-Wan kind of like killed it for me.
Dude, of course. Look how ridiculous they made his fight with Vader. Like, come on now.
It just
They can't help but put the lightsaber right on their dicks and go meow 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 meow.
it's
Meow.
just
That's all they do. That's all they
And
do.
it's just I don't like the idea of them confronting each other before the movies and stuff either. It's like, why did you have to? Why? I mean, it's like they're giving us a movie that the only reason is just for corporate reasons. They can put Obi-Wan on it and they can make money off of it.
Well,
And
and then yeah,
value.
who's going to hold them accountable? They can just say, okay, the fans have spoken. It's no longer canon. Hooray! Okay, and so either way they win. fans are mad, so then they watch, and then they get more people to watch, so then they can bitch about it on Twitter or on Facebook,
I,
and then if it becomes big enough problem, okay, well, you know what, we really listen to you guys, hooray, all right, we like you, and then they'll just make much more money.
I have a theory on that. And I think that's the reason why also they're starting to go in more of like this diverse casting route and stuff. My problem is I have no problem with people of different backgrounds playing lead parts. I think that that's awesome. I love, like Black Panther and all of that. My critique is like, why not tell new stories, create new characters? Why do we always have to keep having remakes to begin with in the first place? And the thing is like they come in and it's just lazy story because they don't have to creatively think of anything new. But then they'll just go ahead and recast it, put a person of color in the role. And then if it tanks, oh, it's because people are racist. So now they have to go see it.
That's funny. I mean, yeah, I don't know. There's with the illusion theme,
Yeah.
it's funny. So apparently in history, the proverbial witch would use the branch of a holly holly tree or holly bush to cast spells, and so therein lies Hollywood, and that's why it's called Hollywood. And this is how they cast their spells. And whether you think of it in witchcraft or whether you think of it in just like just evil people, well, then we see Harvey Weinstein. And then who knew about Harvey Weinstein? Oprah fucking Winfrey is her best freaking friend. And who wasn't connected to Harvey Weinstein? Nobody. Who knew about Harvey Weinstein? Everybody. And so, like, I don't know, man.
I see it completely as a religion, though. It's really this whole wokest, secularist. I don't know what it has a weird thing, but it almost has like a cult following. Like, I don't know, during the lockdown, one of the shows I binge watched on Netflix was, I think it was called like Hollywood or something. It was like a mini series that they did. And it takes place like in the 1940s or 1950s Hollywood. And it tries to reimagine things, like they have Rock Hudson and stuff. And the whole thing leans into identity, like the identity grift and stuff like that. They're like trying to reimagine that all of history would have been just perfect if Rock Hudson was just an out actor. But somehow all of the sins in the world and all of the inequalities and stuff like that, it's just not to say that it was
replace Rock Hudson with Harvey Milk, and the whole world is happy.
But my thing is, yeah, obviously it was a repressed time, and I absolutely understand, and I love the fact that we've made a lot of strides and progress. But don't just assume that if like people were out and about gay, or you had multiracial relationships back in the 1940s, that we wouldn't be dropping bombs in poor countries and stuff.
Look how much we're messing it up right now. Why would we do it any better if we did it back then?
Yeah, exactly. It's just another illusion. It's just another illusion.
Yeah. Well, a big presumption is a disease, right? This is why a lot of these woke films are they're trash, because it's a diseased mind that says, hey, this is what people want. Like, nobody wants that. A diseased mind, like what a lot of progressives do. They say Latin X. You know what? Latinos hate Latinx.
I watched.
It's like 92 or like it's over 90% of Latinos do not like Latinx. So what do Democrats do? They lean into it, man.
They lean into it, and then they're wondering why Latinos are starting to vote Republican now, and because they are. I've read several polls that they're saying that Latinos are starting to break. In fact, I live in a state where we just, I think the GOP just picked up a swing state, and it was considered a liberal one because it was a predominantly Hispanic constituency, and it went for the GOP. And I think, what gives you the right to go in and change somebody's language? Isn't that just another definition of colonialism? Isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and not just that, but if you say, hey, I don't like this, and then I say it in your face, versus me being an asshole to you. If I'm an asshole to you, don't I actually see you? But if I use a word that you like, yo, that doesn't represent me at all. I mean, doesn't it just show how much I don't see you at all? And so the idea that a GOP, just because Oh yeah, maybe there are some racist GOPs. You know, maybe they are dickheads. You know, but you know what? If they help them get a job, they help them put food on the table. You know what? People have to deal with dickheads all their life,
Yeah.
and so what? But when you refuse to even acknowledge me and acknowledge well, why? Where's the incentive for me to support your ideas? You've shown me who you are. The exact same people that say when somebody tells you who they are, well, then believe them. Okay, well, I am, and you're fucking crazy, right? And yeah, man, it's again just a diseased mind. It's not because wokeism is you know, or that these are only weak-minded people would ever think that. It's because we are programmable by design, and you better be careful, right? We talk about you know, peers is growing up. Watch your peers. You hang around your friends, and you're going to do that. You're like, no, I won't. Well, yes, you fucking will, because
Yeah.
that's just simply the way life works.
It's kind of a scary thought. You say that we're a program of minds because it really rings true. We're basically commodities.
Well, so that's the way we're treated now. Yes, that's not the intent of life. We're programmable by design so that we can adapt and overcome, and you know, and survive.
It's the balance of
Right.
individualism versus really, you know, belonging or being a complete uh, somebody who's relying completely on society to shape us and stuff. Because that's the danger is when they want to divide everybody into certain communities. That's the new terminology, right? Whether it's the African American community, whether it's the LGBTQ alphabet community, or
Right.
whatever, divide everybody into certain groups, but also within those groups, there's also a certain life script that everyone's handed. Like, here's what you have to adhere to be a member of our club. They're not, it's very implicit. It's not
Well,
explicit.
you know, but you know what? Who holds the rules and who demands the rules aren't actually people who mainly are part of that alphabet gang. It's usually supporters of the alphabet gang,
Yeah.
and that's what's crazy, man. Is that it has nothing to do with the individual that they're trying to, you know,
Yeah.
maybe support or give protections for. It has everything to do with groupthink, and
Yeah.
groupthink is a disease.
It's easier to manage that way.
Oh, a lot easier. But and then the thing is they say, well, even though I'm not them, I'm going to do everything I can to try and help them out, and you know, I'm going to help them with what they want. Well, the problem is, ain't nobody knows what they want. So if you go out of your way to help somebody with what they want, you're going to get caught up in their chaos and confusion because they have no freaking idea. Which is why your power starts with knowing what you want. Because when you know what you want and you actually start walking in that truth and logarithmically excelling through life, other people will say, holy shit, he knows what he wants. He goes after what he wants. How do I become that?
Yeah, that's true. Let your light so shine.
Yeah.
And just don't worry about empowering yourself versus the community and stuff like that at large, because you can really only focus on yourself. You can't rely there's no such thing as a savior person that you're going to vote in, whether it's Bernie, whether it's Obama, whether it's Trump, you know, for some of the right wingers or anything. It's really just all dependent upon yourself.
Yeah. 100%. That was a fun conversation, man. I enjoyed that.
Likewise.
I feel like that's a pretty natural kind of place to end. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, I love it.
Yeah, awesome.
That's great.
Well, yeah, and so you know, wokeism, it's something that I feel that we should be able to have fun with. Unfortunately, you're not able to. And if I use
poke fun of that, it's definitely fun to joke about.
it
It's
really is.
to share memes about and all of that stuff. But the thing is that's why I just don't post much on Facebook anymore. Is I just got so tired of being drowned, like tied into. I mean, I remember just sharing a simple meme. I think it was about earlier this year about Putin and like COVID related. Be like, oh, here's our next boogeyman or something to that effect. And somebody just tore into me like I was Hitler himself for just sharing a meme, just poking fun at that. And it's just like, some point, it's just like, you know, what's the point?
Oh, sure. Hey, man, I love peanut butter and honey sandwiches. So what? You hate jelly? motherfucker, did I say that? Are
Yeah.
those the words that I said? No. Quit with
Yeah.
your projections.
Yeah.
And therein lies, and certainly I was guilty of stupid shit like that, when I was stuck in groupthink.
Yeah.
But the thing is I would say, and maybe this is, the last final parting, words of wisdom, is that allow yourself to make mistakes and don't hold yourself so accountable to those mistakes that you can't become a different person, right? Alan Watts talks about a lot of the problem with karma is people see a lot of their problems arise because they have present moments and present moments and present moments just stacked along, just
Mhm.
like a train with a bunch of cars. And they feel that if when they pull into the station, that if they're gonna deal with their karma, well, then a lot of times they go to the back car, they unload that, then they shunt it into the side, then they unload the next one and shunt it to the side. Where when you realize that it's all an illusion, and that it's present moment, and there's only the now. And if you are not that person now, well, just uncouple from who you're not. And that's the simplest way to go about life. And it doesn't mean that you don't make amends, right? Because you've learned, because you're not that person. That's how you made amends, is that you've grown to not be that person.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that you flagellate yourself. But people who are scared live in a world where fisticuffs are thrown a lot in order to show that justice was served. And if they feel that they're the problem, well, guess
Sure.
who's going to get punched?
Yeah, that's true.
Well, awesome, man. As always, I've enjoyed the conversation, and looking forward to next week, episode 4. We'll have to figure out a fun theme for that.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Well, yeah, we'll have to think about that. We'll have to discuss something.
Sounds good.
Hopefully we won't be in a nuclear fallout.
Dude, no shit. I know. Right. I'll have big like these radiation blisters popping out of my neck. Right. But oh man. On that macabre note, bud. Love you. Take care.
Love you back, bud. Take care.